I still remember the day I walked into Meridian Tech's original office. It was a converted warehouse in East London with exposed brick walls, uneven flooring, and windows that rattled when the wind blew. I was 26, armed with a computer, science degree, and boundless enthusiasm. The company was barely 2 years old then, with just 15 employees crammed into that industrial space. James, the founder, had interviewed me himself. A 40-minute conversation that felt more like two friends discussing a shared passion than a formal assessment. "We can't compete with big tech salaries," he told me honestly, "but you'll build something that matters here." I believed him, and for the first 5 years that promise held true. I started as a software developer, but in a startup that small, roles blurred. I pitched in with customer support, drafted marketing emails, and once even helped assemble furniture when we expanded to the second floor. We worked ridiculous hours, fueled by takeaway curry and the intoxicating belief that we were creating something revolutionary, a data analytics platform for small businesses that couldn't afford enterprise solutions. Our first major client came in my second year. A regional retail chain took a chance on us, and I spent 3 weeks practically living at their headquarters, customizing our system to their needs. When they signed a 3-year contract, we celebrated at the local pub until closing time. James bought rounds for everyone, clapped me on the back, and said, "This is just the beginning." He was right. The company grew steadily. 20 employees became 50, then 100. We moved to proper offices in Canary Wharf. Our client list expanded beyond the UK into Europe. I evolved from developer to team lead to head of product development. My salary grew too, though never quite matching what friends earned at established tech giants. But I had equity, and more importantly, I had influence. My ideas shaped our core product. My voice mattered in strategy meetings. Through all this, James remained the heart of the company. He knew everyone by name, remembered details about their families, and maintained the culture of innovation even as we scaled. When competitors tried to poach me with promises of higher pay and bigger titles, I declined without hesitation. Loyalty wasn't just about the company, it was about James and the vision we shared. The watershed moment came in our 8th year. A Silicon Valley tech conglomerate, Stellar Code, made an acquisition offer that was too substantial to ignore. The board meetings were tense, with opinions sharply divided. I argued passionately for remaining independent, believing we had more growth ahead. James listened to all sides, his face increasingly drawn as the debate stretched across weeks. When he finally called me to his office, I could tell by his expression that the decision had been made. "We're accepting the offer," he said quietly. "I need you with me on this, Alex." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "Will we still have autonomy?" "They've promised operational independence for at least 3 years, he replied, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "And you'll lead product development for the entire European division." I nodded slowly, trying to process what this meant for the company we'd built, for the team that trusted us, for the culture we'd created. "This isn't selling out," James continued as if reading my thoughts. "It's scaling up. We can take our vision further with their resources." Part of me wanted to argue, to fight for our independence. But I trusted James. After 8 years of following his lead, I wasn't about to stop now. "I'm with you," I said finally. What I didn't realize then was how those 4 simple words would be tested in ways I couldn't imagine. The acquisition marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. One that would challenge everything I thought I knew about loyalty, integrity, and what it means to build something that lasts. The integration with Stellar Code began smoothly enough. They kept their promise about operational independence, at least on paper. We maintained our London headquarters, our branding remained intact, and most of our team stayed on. But subtle changes crept in almost immediately. First came the reporting structures. New layers of management materialized between us and the American headquarters. Weekly reports became mandatory, requiring hours of documentation that took time away from actual development. Our quarterly targets shifted from client satisfaction and product innovation to user acquisition rates and revenue metrics. James seemed to change too. He traveled frequently to San Francisco for executive meetings, returning with new corporate jargon and strategic initiatives. The man who once joined coding sprints and ordered pizza for late-night debugging sessions now spoke about synergies and vertical integration. His office door, previously always open, began to stay closed more often than not. "It's temporary," he assured me during a rare dinner together, almost a year after the acquisition. "We're establishing trust with the parent company. Once we prove ourselves, we'll get back to our roots." I wanted to believe him, but the evidence suggested otherwise. The product roadmap that had once been my domain now required approval from 3 different committees. Features I considered essential were postponed in favor of integrations with other Stellar Code products. My team grew frustrated as their creative input diminished. Then came the first wave of restructuring. 10% of our staff, mostly people who'd been with us from the early days, were let go with generous severance packages but little explanation. James delivered the news in a company-wide email rather than face-to-face as he would have done before. When I confronted him, his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "This came from above," he said, gesturing vaguely upward. The overlap in certain functions was inefficient. These were people we'd hired personally, who'd sacrificed higher salaries elsewhere to build something with us. Now they were overlap. I felt sick to my stomach but swallowed my protest. James was under pressure too, I reasoned. Fighting this battle wouldn't help anyone. 3 years passed this way. 3 years of gradual erosion of everything that had made our company special. Our original mission of democratizing data analytics for small businesses faded as we pivoted toward enterprise clients that aligned with Stellar Code's portfolio. Teams became siloed. Innovation slowed. The vibrant culture that had once defined us withered under the weight of corporate processes. I stayed, telling myself I could protect what remained of our vision. I became a buffer between my team and the increasing demands from headquarters. I fought in meetings, pushed back against unreasonable deadlines, and tried to preserve spaces for creativity. Sometimes I succeeded. Mostly, I didn't. Then James announced he was leaving. Not retiring, not moving to another position within Stellar Code, leaving completely to start a new venture. He told me over coffee away from the office. "I've given it everything I could," he said, looking older than his 45 years. "But it's not our company anymore, Alex. Hasn't been for a while." "So you're abandoning ship?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He winced. "I stayed as long as I could to protect what we built, but my hands are tied now. The 3-year independence agreement expires next month, and the new integration plan—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "What new plan?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "Full absorption. Meridian ceases to exist as a brand. Product development centralizes in California. London becomes a satellite sales office." He pushed a folder across the table. "They'll announce it next week. I wanted you to hear it from me first." I didn't open the folder. Didn't need to. The cold reality seeped through me like London rain. Persistent. Inescapable. 13 years of my life, my work, my passion, would be dismantled in corporate bureaucracy. "What will you do?" James asked after a long silence. I looked at him, my mentor, my friend, now almost a stranger in his tailored suit and carefully neutral expression. "I don't know," I answered honestly. But as the words left my mouth, something hardened inside me. I wasn't ready to surrender just yet. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning. Evelyn Morrison, Stellar Code's VP of Global Operations, stood in our conference room to deliver the news. She was polished and efficient, with a PowerPoint presentation that reduced 13 years of our work to transition timelines and organizational charts. Meridian would be fully integrated into Stellar Code's Enterprise Solutions division. Our product would become a feature in their existing analytics suite. Most engineering roles would relocate to California. Those who couldn't or wouldn't move would receive competitive severance packages. I sat in silence, watching my colleagues' faces shift from shock to resignation. Many had suspected this was coming. Some had already updated their LinkedIn profiles. A few looked to me, perhaps hoping I'd stand up and fight. But what was there to fight? The decision had been made in boardrooms thousands of miles away by executives who had never stepped foot in our office. "Alex," Evelyn said, turning her attention to me after the presentation, "I'd like you to lead the transition team. Your institutional knowledge is invaluable." Translation: help us dismantle what you've built so we can salvage the parts we find useful. "I'll need time to consider," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady despite the anger boiling inside me. She nodded with practiced understanding. "Of course. Let's schedule a one-on-one for tomorrow." I spent that night in my flat, staring at the London skyline through my window. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the city lights. On my laptop, I scrolled through old photos from Meridian's history, the original warehouse office, team celebrations, product launches, faces of people who'd moved on or been pushed out, videos of James giving passionate speeches about our mission. By morning, I knew I couldn't do it. Couldn't help Stellar Code cannibalize the company I'd helped build. Couldn't pretend this was just business. When Evelyn arrived for our meeting, I was ready. "I appreciate the offer," I told her, "but I'll be declining the transition role." Her smile faltered only slightly. "That's disappointing. The relocation package to San Francisco is quite generous. I'm not interested in relocating." "I see." She tapped her tablet screen a few times. "In that case, we can discuss severance options. Your tenure with the company entitles you to—" "I'm not here to negotiate my severance," I cut in. "I'm here to tender my resignation effective immediately." That got her full attention. "Immediate resignation forfeits severance benefits, Alex. I don't think that's in your best interest." "What's in my best interest isn't your concern." Her expression hardened. "This is emotional decision-making. Take the weekend to reconsider." "There's nothing to reconsider." I stood up, gathering my things. "You're not buying my cooperation with severance. The transition will happen with or without you," she said, a hint of frustration cracking through her professional veneer. "I'm well aware. Good luck explaining our code base to your Silicon Valley team. Parts of it are held together with digital duct tape and inside jokes." I walked out before she could respond. On my way through the office, I stopped at my team's area. 8 developers looked up as I approached, the last of the original Meridian engineers, hand-picked over the years. "I'm leaving," I told them. Simply. "Not for California. For good." Mira, our senior backend developer, spoke first. "What are we supposed to do?" I didn't have a neat answer. "Whatever feels right to you. Take the relocation if it makes sense. Take the severance if it doesn't. Just know that whatever happens to Meridian now, what we built together was real." I cleared out my desk while they watched in stunned silence. 13 years of professional life fit into a single cardboard box. A laptop, some notebooks, a few mementos. Nina from HR found me as I was leaving, paperwork in hand. "Evelyn said you're terminating immediately," she said, her expression sympathetic. "Are you sure about this?" "Completely." "At least take the weekend." "It's done, Nina." I signed the forms without reading them. "Please make sure my team is treated fairly in whatever comes next." The London rain greeted me as I exited the building for the last time. I stood on the pavement, suddenly untethered. No meetings to attend, no deadlines to meet, no team looking to me for direction. Just a man with a cardboard box and a career-sized hole where purpose used to be. My phone buzzed with messages, colleagues expressing shock, asking questions. I couldn't answer. One from James. "Heard what happened, call me." I silenced it and walked to the tube station. I had no plan, no next step. Just the certainty that I couldn't participate in dismantling something I'd helped create. The integrity of my decision was cold comfort as I rode the underground home, surrounded by commuters whose workdays were proceeding normally. I'd walked away from financial security, from a career I'd built, from people who depended on me. Yet, beneath the anxiety and doubt, something else stirred, a peculiar sense of lightness. For the first time in years, I had made a decision based solely on what I believed was right, not what was strategic or expected or necessary for survival in a corporate ecosystem. I just didn't know where that decision would lead me. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of job listings that didn't excite me, of LinkedIn messages from recruiters offering roles that felt like pale imitations of what I'd had. 3 weeks of ignoring calls from former colleagues wondering why I'd left so abruptly, of deflecting questions from family about my next move. I told everyone I was taking time to reassess. The truth was more complicated. I didn't know what came next when everything I'd built had been taken away. I was nursing a pint at the Anchor, a pub near Tower Bridge where Meridian had celebrated countless milestones, when a familiar voice broke through my thoughts. "I figured I'd find you here eventually." Mira slid into the booth across from me, setting down her own drink. Her dark hair was pulled back in its usual practical ponytail, but something about her seemed different, more determined. "Shouldn't you be packing for California?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not going. None of us are." "None of who?" "The team. Your team." She leaned forward. "After you left, we started talking about what Meridian meant to us, about what happens to our product in Stellar Code's hands." I took a long drink, letting the bitter ale wash away the tightness in my throat. "It's not our product anymore, Mira. That's where you're wrong." She pulled out her tablet and slid it across the table. "Look at this." I glanced at the screen, an email thread between my former team and several of our oldest clients. The messages expressed concern about Stellar Code's integration plans, about losing the personalized service and specialized features that had made Meridian's product invaluable to their operations. "Clients are nervous," I said with a shrug. "It's natural during an acquisition." "Keep reading." I scrolled down, stopping at a message from Thomas Harrington, CEO of Harrington Retail Group, our first major client from over a decade ago. His message was blunt. If Stellar Code dismantled the Meridian platform as planned, HRG would terminate their contract and look for alternatives. "Tom's always been dramatic," I said, though something stirred inside me, a flicker of vindication. "It's not just him." Mira took back the tablet and opened another folder. 17 clients have expressed similar concerns. Together, they represent nearly 40% of Meridian's recurring revenue. I stared at her, processing what this meant. "And you're showing me this because we have a proposition." She took a deep breath. "We want to start over. Build something new that preserves what made Meridian special, and we want you to lead it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The audacity of it, the sheer improbability, struck me like a physical force. "Stellar Code would bury us," I finally said. "Non-compete clauses, intellectual property claims. We've thought of that." She pulled out a folder and laid printouts on the table between us. "Our contracts have gaps. The IP clauses cover the code itself, but not the methodology, not the approach. We'd build from scratch, focusing on what clients actually need, not what Stellar Code thinks they should want." I flipped through the documents, legal analyses, market assessments, preliminary business plans. "How long have you been working on this?" "Since the day you walked out." A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. "You inspired something when you left, Alex. Showed us there were options beyond accepting the inevitable. Who else knows about this?" "Just the core team. We needed to be sure before approaching anyone else." She hesitated. "We've also been talking to James." The mention of his name sent a jolt through me. James is starting his own thing. A fintech venture, yes, but he's willing to be an advisor. Maybe an angel investor. She leaned forward. "He feels guilty, Alex, about how things ended. This could be his way of making amends." I leaned back, mind racing. Starting over meant risks, financial insecurity, potential legal battles, the possibility of very public failure. But it also meant reclaiming purpose, rebuilding on our own terms. "What about funding?" I asked, the practical questions now flowing freely. "Infrastructure? Office space? We have seed funding commitments from 2 former Meridian executives who left after the acquisition. They believe in what we did, what we could do again. Her eyes held mine. As for space, we were thinking of starting small, maybe a converted warehouse with exposed brick and uneven floors. The reference to Meridian's original office wasn't subtle. It was Mira's way of saying this wasn't just about business. It was about recapturing something essential that had been lost. I'd need time to think, I said, though the energy humming through me suggested my mind was already made up. Take all the time you need. She gathered her things and stood. Just remember that Stellar Code's transition timeline moves forward whether we act or not. In 3 months, the Meridian we knew will be gone completely. After she left, I remained at the table, staring at the documents she'd left behind. The pub bustled around me, people celebrating, commiserating, marking the ordinary transitions of life. My hands moved almost of their own accord, reaching for my phone. I called James for the first time since his departure. I wondered when I'd hear from you, he answered on the second ring. Mira found you then? She did. I paused. Is this insane, James? Are we setting ourselves up for disaster? His laugh was warm, familiar, the James I'd known before Stellar Code. Probably, but wasn't Meridian insane in the beginning too? As the weight of indecision lifted, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Possibility, stretching, out before me like an uncharted path. Not a restoration of what was lost, but the chance to build something new, something truly our own. The warehouse in Hackney wasn't exactly like Meridian's original office. It was smaller, damper, with pipes that clanked alarmingly whenever the ancient heating system kicked in. But 6 weeks after my conversation with Mira, it became the headquarters of Foundry Analytics, our fresh start. We began with 8 people, crammed around second-hand desks, 5 developers from Meridian, a UX designer who had left shortly after the acquisition, a sales manager who'd been laid off in the first restructuring, and me. Our funding was modest. James had come through with angel investment supplemented by the severance packages some team members had negotiated. We calculated we had 18 months to become profitable before money became critical. 2 challenges loomed largest: building a competitive product without infringing on Stellar Code's intellectual property, and reclaiming clients without triggering legal action. We hired a solicitor who specialized in tech startups and IP law, a sharp-witted woman named Priya who didn't sugarcoat our situation. You're walking a tightrope, she told us bluntly during our first consultation. They'll be watching for any excuse to shut you down. So what's our strategy? I asked. Complete transparency. We acknowledge our Meridian history but emphasize we're building something new. We focus on addressing specific client needs that Stellar Code is neglecting, and we document everything, every line of code, every design decision, to prove independent development. It wasn't an ideal position, but it was workable. We set strict protocols. No copying from Meridian's codebase, no accessing old documentation, no using proprietary algorithms. Everything had to be created fresh, even if that meant temporary inefficiency. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. Without corporate bureaucracy, we moved quickly. Ideas flowed freely, were debated openly, implemented rapidly. We stayed late into the night, fueled by delivery food and the intoxicating freedom of building something that was entirely ours. For the first time in years, I slept deeply despite working longer hours than I had at Meridian even in its startup days. 3 months in, we had a minimum viable product, rougher than Meridian's platform but focused on the specific pain points we knew our target clients faced. The question became who to approach first. We need someone willing to take a risk on us, Mira argued during a strategy session. Someone with enough frustration with Stellar Code to override caution. But not someone so valuable that Stellar Code will fight to keep them, added Dev, our lead engineer. We need to fly under their radar initially. My thoughts returned to Thomas Harrington. His company had been vocal about their dissatisfaction, but as our first major client at Meridian, approaching them felt too obvious, too provocative. We needed someone else, Someone connected enough to give us credibility but not prominent enough to draw immediate attention. The opportunity came from an unexpected source. Lena Chen, our UX designer, had maintained a friendship with the operations director at Callaway Manufacturing, a mid-sized client that had joined Meridian shortly before the acquisition. According to Lena, they were struggling with the transition to StellarCode's platform. Their team can't make sense of the new system, she reported. They've submitted 17 support tickets in the past month with minimal response. I nodded, slowly. Are they contractually bound to StellarCode? Annual renewal comes up in 6 weeks. They're already looking at alternatives. It was the opening we needed. I arranged a meeting with Martin Callaway, the company's founder, at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in Covent Garden. He arrived early, a broad-shouldered man in his 60s with a no-nonsense demeanor that had intimidated me during our Meridian days. I'll be direct, he said after brief pleasantries. I know who you are and what you're trying to build. Question is, can you actually deliver what StellarCode promised but failed to provide? I appreciated his bluntness. We can't offer everything Meridian did, not yet. But we understand your specific needs better than anyone. And unlike StellarCode, you'll be a priority for us, not an afterthought. He studied me carefully. StellarCode's lawyers will come after you if they see you poaching clients. We're not poaching, I corrected. We're offering an alternative to clients who are already looking elsewhere. There's a distinction. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Legal hair splitting. I like it. He pushed his cup aside. Show me what you've built. I opened my laptop and walked him through our prototype. It wasn't polished, the interface was still basic, some features incomplete. But the core functionality addressed exactly the pain points his team had reported. He asked pointed technical questions that I answered honestly, including acknowledging what we couldn't yet provide. When I finished, he sat back and folded his arms. It's rough. It is, I agreed. But it's built specifically for operations like yours, by people who understand your workflow. And we're small enough that when you need changes, you'll talk directly to the people who can implement them, not a help desk halfway around the world. He was silent for a long moment. My technical team needs to evaluate it. Of course. And I'll need flexible terms, month to month initially with clear exit clauses. My pulse quickened. This wasn't a rejection. We can arrange that. And a significant discount for being early adopters. Within reason, I countered, finding my footing in the familiar rhythm of negotiation. We're a startup, not a charity. He laughed, a genuine, appreciative sound. There's the Alex I remember, always protecting your margins. He extended his hand. Send over the paperwork. We'll be your guinea pigs. As we shook hands, the weight of the moment settled over me. Our first client, the first vote of confidence in our vision, the first step toward proving that walking away from Meridian hadn't been just an emotional decision, but the beginning of something sustainable. One more thing, Martin said as we parted. Thomas Harrington called me last week, asked about analytics alternatives. His eyes held mine meaningfully. Might be worth giving him a ring. I nodded, understanding the significance. The client network, the relationships built over years, hadn't disappeared with Meridian. They were still there, still valuable, waiting to be reactivated. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe we might actually succeed. 18 months after our launch, I found myself outside the glass-fronted headquarters of StellarCode's London office. The building loomed over the Thames, all sleek lines and tinted windows, a stark contrast to our modest warehouse space that we'd gradually renovated into something functional if not fancy. I straightened my tie, a concession to the formality of the occasion, and walked through the revolving doors. Foundry Analytics had grown beyond our cautious projections. What began with one client expanded to 7, then 15, then 32. Most were former Meridian customers disillusioned with StellarCode's implementation. Some were new prospects drawn by our reputation for personalized service and adaptable solutions. We'd expanded to 23 employees and were now profitable enough to consider a proper office upgrade. Our success hadn't gone unnoticed. Stellar Code's legal team had sent threatening letters, alleging various intellectual property infringements, that our solicitor systematically dismantled. When legal intimidation failed, they tried to lure away our developers with substantial salary offers. No one left. The loyalty surprised even me, not because I doubted my team's commitment, but because I understood the financial sacrifices they were making to stay. The meeting today wasn't my idea. Marcus Hoffman, who had replaced Evelyn Morrison as VP of Global Operations 6 months earlier, had reached out directly. His message was cryptic. A mutual opportunity to discuss. I'd consulted with our team before accepting, wary of traps but curious about their intentions. A receptionist led me to a conference room with panoramic views of the city. Marcus was waiting alone. A calculated choice, I suspected, to make this feel like a conversation, rather than a confrontation. He was younger than I expected, perhaps my age, with the polished confidence of someone who'd climbed corporate ladders rapidly. "Alex," he greeted me, extending his hand. "Appreciate you coming in." I shook his hand briefly. "Your invitation was intriguing." "Let me be direct," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Stellar Code has a problem. Several problems, actually, and I believe you're uniquely positioned to help solve them." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm listening." "The Meridian integration hasn't gone as planned." He slid a folder across the table. "Client retention is down 43% since the full absorption. Technical issues persist despite significant investment, and morale among the remaining London team is abysmal." I left the folder untouched. "Why tell me this?" "Because we're considering a course correction." He leaned forward, reinstating Meridian as a semi-autonomous division with its original focus on small to mid-sized businesses. The market segment is proving more valuable than our analysts initially projected. Understanding dawned. "You want to buy Foundry?" "We want to acquire your company, your team, and your expertise," he confirmed. The offer would be substantial, significantly more than what Stellar Code paid for Meridian originally, adjusted for your current scale. I finally opened the folder, scanning the preliminary terms. The figure was indeed substantial. Life-changing. Money for me and everyone on my team. But something felt wrong about the circular nature of it all. "Let me make sure I understand," I said, closing the folder. "You want to pay us to rebuild what you already had and chose to dismantle?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Business decisions are made based on available information at the time. Sometimes that information proves incomplete. Or the decision-makers fail to listen to the people who actually understand the product and market," I countered. He conceded the point with a slight nod. "Hence why we're having this conversation. The terms include leadership roles for you and your key team members, with guaranteed autonomy for at least 5 years. The same autonomy promised to Meridian. With more robust protections," he insisted. "We've learned from our mistakes, Alex." Had they? I wondered. Or was this simply another corporate cycle? Acquire, integrate, falter, correct, repeat, with no fundamental change in approach? I thought about my team, about the culture we'd rebuilt from ashes, about the clients who trusted us precisely, because we weren't part of a tech conglomerate. "I'll need to discuss this with my partners," I said finally. "Of course." He seemed pleased, already interpreting my response as tentative acceptance. "We can arrange meetings with the whole team to address any concerns." I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. "I have one question first. Why not just compete with us? You have vastly more resources." His smile was surprisingly candid. "Because sometimes it's not about resources. It's about people, about trust, about understanding what makes a product work beyond its technical specifications." He gestured around at the sleek office. "Those things are harder to build than software." As I left the building, London's afternoon light cast long shadows across the pavement. I walked slowly, turning over the conversation in my mind. The offer was tempting in many ways: financial security, vindication, the chance to reclaim Meridian's legacy on better terms. But something felt hollow about rejoining the institution that had shown such disregard for what we'd built. My phone buzzed. A message from Mira. How did it go? I paused, looking back at Stellar Code's towering headquarters, then across the river toward the east, where our modest warehouse office stood. The contrast wasn't just architectural, it was philosophical. One represented consolidated power, efficiency at scale, shareholder value. The other represented independence, adaptability, human relationships. They want to buy us, I texted back. Big offer. 3 dots appeared as she typed her response. To fix what they broke? Essentially. Another pause, then, team meeting. Tonight? Yes, but Mira. Yeah? I took a deep breath, suddenly clear about my own position. I think we're just getting started. The reply came instantly. Same. As I continued walking, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Whatever the team decided collectively, I knew my answer. The past 18 months hadn't just been about rebuilding a business or proving Stellar Code wrong. They'd been about rediscovering why I fell in love with this work in the first place, creating something that mattered, with people who cared, for clients who valued more than just efficiency metrics. Some might call it irrational to walk away from such an offer. Perhaps it was, but I'd learned that sometimes the most rewarding paths aren't the most logical ones. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts, even when they lead you away from apparent security toward continued uncertainty. Besides, there was something undeniably satisfying about the symmetry. Having left one company on principle, then declining to rejoin its corporate structure for the same reason. Not out of bitterness or revenge, but because I'd found something more authentic in the aftermath. The London skyline stretched before me, a mixture of historic buildings and modern glass towers, permanence and change coexisting. Somewhere in that balance was the future of Foundry Analytics, whatever shape it might take. Not defined by what we'd lost or what we opposed, but by what we chose to build next.